Any coffee? Any friends?
So are you from the yeah. So I think that's but that's good for me.
Vai, come on, sta perché
The what?
Hello, 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 hello. 1, 2, 1, 2. That one here is a bit over. One, two, 1, 2.
coming from there. Why? I don't know. I'm 1, 2, 1, 2. Using both cameras.
do the class while we're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's not like, so yes, the primary foundation of it, so the content is specific things.
That should switch.
And also,
Yeah,
the
but
topics that come in translate, we've already done a translation.
record.
So there was those actual work that we had to do.
Yeah. No,
And we had to do,
I mean, if it goes that way, it's going to be okay. It's going to be bad.
so we just really
What is that?
it's about okay.
Right. When you're taking that choice,
Let's try it. Yeah, that's it. Because actually I was number one on what she used to have to do was just to be in. She said it was coming in. Intellectual oh, okay, that's good. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
from half
the best
to
ones there, so that I'm trying to switch that out. That's
that's
going to work anyway. We are live at the moment, it's just that we just when we're really shortly.
and some of the subjects are new. Yeah. Back to next week, but there's your French music, so that should be okay. So we'll do a message around things like and it's not going to be fine, I can book it. Second declarations and everything. This you understand. Yeah. Well, because I went to French, right? We went because we were in DRC. Yeah, we went to the French. Yeah. Okay. Michelle was younger, so he does well in French, but it's like,
Good afternoon, everyone. Food is ready. Please help yourselves before we start. I heard your knee. Sorry.
Never mind the subject material, we just maybe. Yeah. The big one. But now I think they're very creative too. I'm enjoying reading some.
27 now.
That's good. So yes, so that's so this is something good. You sure? I think because every time I see them, that's why I was thinking about it. collapse. You know, you have to see it back. So my back just didn't care. I was thinking it was really done was so far outside the door.
Okay, so
a couple of days ago, but I think it was
No, there's one, a couple of golden ones.
It's very different. I like it. Yeah.
My own phone.
It's fun. Just,
So I like that. Yeah, this is what I do.
yeah. Well, I mean, some friends. Could not be fast, and we like the first one.
It's gonna go before you know it.
That's a good reach. How's everyone doing?
Well, good.
Up here, I'm John. I'm here today. I got to meet Kwame in 2016. I met him at a networking event. That tells you the power in networking. 2 years down the line, he sent a message to me through a friend, and I got speaking to him, and I'm here again today. It's good to see everyone. I'm looking forward to speaking to everyone at some point today. I hope you all are. There's a reason why it's a networking event. We're supposed to get to know each other a bit better. So if we're leaving this place today and we haven't met at least one person, then we haven't done something right. So please, make an effort. Okay, welcome to Fenchurch Professionals' first ever event. I'm very excited, you know, to get this many people on a Saturday afternoon. It's raining. It's really good. So I'm excited and I'm looking forward to everything that we have going on. Whilst I know it's a networking event, and sometimes I know it's a bit difficult to get up and get speaking to someone. Some of us are a bit shy. Some of us are a bit more less aware. So we're willing to speak to people. So we thought we'll start by doing the classic icebreaker game. I know we don't have a lot of space, but there is still enough room for us to move around. So we are going to the human bingo. So yay! Okay, so please, can I get two people to please help me with handing these out? So, thank you very much. Thank you. So everybody gets paper, and the aim is to. So I've got some spare pens here. If you have a pen, please use yours. It will really help. We don't have pens to go around. The whole idea is you're supposed to find someone in the room. Thank you. You're supposed to find someone in the room that fits each one of the boxes. So when they give it to you, please turn it upside down. Don't have a look, so that we all get a fair start. Okay? All right. Cool. Please, if you could hand them out to everyone. Turn it upside down, please. No spying. But remember, you have to stand up from your seat and actually go around and speak to people. So the aim is to write someone's name in each of the boxes. So you've got to write someone's name in each of the boxes. So that way you get to speak to someone. And after we're done, it's easier to speak to the person after. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, has everybody got a piece of paper now? Okay. So we've got 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I think 5 minutes is fair. David, what's the time? 45. Okay, so we've got till 45 past to complete it. So up you stand. Start finding someone to fill in the box.
Walk around, ask questions. Just my background. You talk to persons, you find out what it is. You find your name and you put your name there.
Colour your socks, Someone that we knew, a friend of his, his agent. So say that he's great. Yeah, he is good. Yeah, it is
Yeah. Okay, and if you're, we've got two seats here. If you're willing to move forward, please. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's everywhere. Wholesale.
Thank you. Okay. So, how many people managed to get 19 boxes filled? How many got 18? 16? 10? How many people managed to get 10? 9? You got 12. Wow. Can I see your paper? I'm surprised. You managed to get 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Wow. I'm not going to count yours because you just wrote your name in the last two. Take it as 10, 11. 11, technically.
That's 13, so I don't want
You've got to name in 2 boxes.
I did put it in 2 boxes.
Yeah, so we'll make it 11.
Just give him one. Give him
11. Well, we still got the highest number. Who is Henry? Nice to meet you, sir. You're probably one of the few people not wearing a black or white socks here today. And how many people are June babies here?
June.
Quite a lot of June babies, yes. June, I'm a June baby as well. How many people have ever played in an orchestra before? Interesting. Okay, I think the whole point of this game was to actually get you talking to people. And I think that was achieved. So well done, everyone. I know there were some really tough ones here. So. But I guess some people met me, but they forgot to ask me. They didn't remember to ask me any questions. I actually fit into quite a few of those boxes. So yeah, excited. Okay, very quickly, we'll just move on. We're here today because Fenchurch professionals have put this together. I'm eager to hear a bit more about what they do and what they have planned. So I'm going to call Kwame to come up and talk to us about that.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi everyone. Hi. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Kwame, as Arthur just said. Fenchurch Professionals came about just about 3 months ago. Where, I mean, working in the city, London, being a Christian as well, sometimes having finished work on a Friday and colleagues go, let's go to the pub or let's go out clubbing, and sometimes some professional networking groups that you go to may not be in line with what your Christian life is. So I decided to come together, put together a program, a networking group where we can come together and meet like-minded people. Just network, and through that, networking is so powerful, I believe, and I've met so many people through networking. I met Ope, as she said, through a networking event about 2015 or so. So I decided to put something together and get people coming in, who sit down, have a conversation, and get good people who have gone through the ropes and have actually gone to lead corporations and different companies. And so I came across Quist, and I said, well, hey, if I'm putting something together like this, who better than to bring Quist in? So I sent her a message, kept dialoguing. Initially was there, and so forth. And so okay, we have her here. But the whole idea of Fenchurch Professional is that we're going to have regular meetings like this. And it's not always going to be about me bringing people, but the whole idea is for the people that come to these events, you make suggestions, who you want to hear from, and then we will then do what we can to then bring them in. Good idea? Good idea. So the first one, obviously myself, I probably see this, but the next one and subsequent ones, I'm hoping that we'll have your contact details. I'm not going to sell your details. GDPR wouldn't allow me to sell it. I couldn't stand here and not talk about GDPR. I am a GDPR professional, so I am very much aware of it. But thank you so much for coming. I don't want to keep you and bore you about what we do. As time goes on, as the years goes on, we will become bigger. So I need help. I can't do it by myself. So if anyone has ideas and wants us to push this forward, please feel free to let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really quickly, I think we can still spare about 10 minutes to play a quick game. Another opportunity for you to meet people. How many people like geography in school? Wasn't really my favorite subject, but we're going to play a little game. So, whilst I know we live in the United Kingdom, if I were to ask a few people here to point out where the biggest cities are on the map of United Kingdom, I'm sure most of us wouldn't know. So we're going to do this in teams. So please, find yourselves in teams of 4. And we are going to complete as many cities as we can find on the map. Teams of 4. Teams of 4. Thank you very much.
That's my
Just write the name on the pages. Write your names at the top of the page. You can write the name.
Oh, you get
Thank you. Okay, I will get back to you after I've had a look at them to see the team that knows their geography best. Okay, right, the moment we've been waiting for. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to bring up Lucy Quist now. I'm just going to read a bit about her. Lucy Quist, MBA class of 2005, is the president of the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences, Ghana, and she's a former CEO of Airtel Ghana. She's a co-founder of Fresh Bakery, the parent company of the Fresh payment platform in Democratic Republic of Congo, and she's co-founded the Executive Women Network in Ghana. She trained as a chartered electrical...
say a very big thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. A very good afternoon and welcome to familiar and newly familiar faces. Some faces I've met in person, others I have met online, and some I've met today. So thank you all for being here today. I also want to say a very big thank you and congratulations to Fenchurch professionals. It's not always that you get the opportunity to discuss your profession with like-minded people, particularly from the point of view of your faith. It tends to be that faith sits in church or in your home and then work sits somewhere else. I think it's a great organization that you've set up, and I hope that many of you will continue to support Fenchurch professionals in time to come. So I'm going to try and make this, we're going to go as quickly as we can. It won't take too long. I want to share a few things with you regarding my profession. Kwame, is this, can I take it away or should I? No, I can do it, it's fine, but I just want to know what to press. Okay, good, we can do that. Sorry about that. Good. I'm going to share a few things with you, tell you a couple of stories along the way, and hopefully we can wrap it up, and then we can spend more time interacting, hearing what's on your mind, what you would like to know. Maybe there are things you'd like to know from me, things you'd like to know from other people in the room, and we make it, as interactive as possible. So the first thing I want to say, most of what I'm going to say today is anchored on a few words. And I'm going to use those words as a means to bring out the things I want to share with you. Oh, and I did forget, didn't I? A big hello to anybody who's watching us online, because we're live streaming as well, so thank you very much for joining us if you are online with us. The first thing I want you to do is relax. Relax. And you're not relaxed. So indulge me for a moment. Let's just close our eyes for a moment. Just close your eyes, put that phone down and kind of, let go of everything and allow your mind to wander and drift, and more importantly, allow your mind to forget about the to-do list. I know there are 101 other things that need to be done, but you chose So let's be present here. Let's think about all the new friends we're going to make, all the new things we're going to hear. Taking a nice deep breath, really nice and deep in this moment. Let it out and open your eyes, relaxed. I hope you did close your eyes. My eyes were shut, so I couldn't tell what was going on. I think before we can talk about our faith in the context of the workplace, we have to have a reason for having faith in the first place, right? And well, as I was preparing for today and I was thinking about it, I was thinking about my foundation from the point of view of faith. And as some of you know, I grew up in London and Ghana. And I recall that when I was really little, we were living in London. I don't recall that we particularly went to church, but I knew that we were a Christian family, but we didn't particularly go to church. And I remember finding a Catholic prayer books. My dad's Roman Catholic, and somehow I just still can't remember how it happened, but somehow I learned the Lord's Prayer, and that's kind of my recollection of faith in being in London. Was when we moved to Ghana, it was quite a different story. When we moved to Ghana, it wasn't just the activity of going to church on Sunday that really changed me, but more importantly, what had a profound impact on me was there was a young man in our neighborhood. And I must admit, back then we didn't think he was young, we thought he was old, because when you're this tall and someone's that tall, you think they're old. But he used to gather all the children around in the neighborhood, and we would have these Bible lessons once a week, and we were required to memorize the verses and come back and discuss them. So this actual activity of him pulling us together and actually discussing what we were learning, and we were really little, I mean, I'm talking under 10 or thereabout, we started to grow and learn and started to build a foundation around being Christians, not just the activity of going to church. So I think that had a really big impact on my thinking. The other thing that, again, helped build faith as an instrumental part of my career and profession is the experiences of life, or are the experiences of life. So one of the things I've talked about a lot in moving to Ghana was my experience of Ghana at the time in the 80s that was very, very difficult and very tough for people. It was a very tough place to live. And I think that that experience of seeing how tough economic conditions could create harsh outcomes for people from a Christian point of view created a sense of responsibility. Right, because what it said to me, living in this time where, to be honest, in 1983 in particular, it was even hard for people to get food to buy. So like that any longer, so thank God for that. But this sense of responsibility that, you know, I can't do anything about it now because I'm too young, but surely there's something I can do about it someday, sometime. And I think that probably has formed, without me realizing it, subconsciously created a big sense of ambition in me. Because if you're little and you want to do something that has an impact and changes people, you have to have ambition. Right? You can't do it without ambition at all. So I think that it created Christian responsibility, which led to ambition. And that ambition translated into me thinking of solutions. So as a young person, I used to think of what could have made the country avert what was happening at the time. And the only thing I could think of, because all the adults I knew kind of worked. So work was what I knew about. And I thought, okay, well, maybe when I grow up, I will be in business. Like, I'll do something in business or run business and different kinds of business. I don't know what it's called or what the jobs are called, but I'll do something. And so that combination of that foundation and ambition stayed with me and had a very, very big impact on the decisions I later made. But before I talk more about what I did beyond that, I want to tell you about one of my absolute favorite people in the Bible. And I draw a lot of inspiration from his story, actually. It's my absolute, when I talk about someone who's just a person, so we put Jesus aside and talk about just a person, I draw a lot of inspiration from Joseph, and it's such an interesting story that, and I promise you this is the only text in the entire, everything else is one slide, but I will read this out to you. Now this is taken from the book of Genesis, chapter 37, verse 5 to 11. And it says, "Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, 'Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And indeed your sheaves stood stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf.'" I'm moving to verse 8 now. "And his brothers said to him, 'Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us?' So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, 'Look, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me.' So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, 'What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?' And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind." Now what I find interesting a lot of the time when we read the story of Joseph is that we all remember the dream coach, right? He had a wonderful coach, his father loved him. And we all remember the end game when he was, pretty much Prime Minister of Egypt, and he's saving the world and feeding the world and doing all the great things. And occasionally, we think about the detail, there's some detail in between, like some stuff happened to him, whatever. But actually, the detail that we don't talk about as much is what inspires me the most from a work point of view. And I wanted to share this verse with you because this verse right here from Joseph's life is about the next stage of what you do when you built a foundation and you have some ambition through some form of responsibility. And it speaks about vision, right? So those dreams that he shared were really about visions of his future. Somehow he had, whether through dreaming, and I think a lot of the time we all have it, but the question is, what do we do with it? This vision of, okay, this is what I believe my contribution could be. This is what I believe I could do, right? In Joseph's case, it was something about rulership, right? We have a paraphrase version. Maybe deep within him, he understood in greater detail what his dreams meant. I do debate with myself sometimes, should he have told his brothers or not? But in telling his brothers, it brings out a very important lesson that we can't walk away with without it. Sometimes I think when I was preparing for this week, some people wrote to me, I remember one young lady said, yeah, she kind of feels like at work, she can't be a Christian. And what happened to Joseph here is a demonstration that sometimes when that vision is shared, sometimes when you're at work and you seem so, you're going places, or sometimes with relatives, and there will be people who will understandably support you. His father kept the matter in mind, he questioned him, but his brothers were like, excuse me, you are son number, what number was it, 5? 11. Oh, he was, yeah, and so son number 11, you're about to do what? When? But most importantly, he had a vision. And I think sometimes when we have these visions, we need support, but we have to be selective about who we share our visions with. It's really important. Because what I've found in my career is that to make progress in your career, you're going to need the support of people. But how are you going to know who that person is that needs to know, and who are the people who simply don't need to know? And I'm hoping to come back to that point, if I don't remind me. But I think for me, Joseph's story takes us on that, it sets us up properly. Now, for me, once I had a vision, and if you have a vision, and you know this is where you want to get to, you're going to have to take some steps, right? You're going to have to take some steps. And that's what brought me to the next word, which I called structure. Now, structure really is a number of things. It is about a plan, true. You need a plan to get to where you want to where you want to get to. But more importantly, in that plan, what is that plan developing or delivering in you? So, when I left school, I moved back to the UK, and I wanted to go to university. I couldn't go to university. I'm sure some of you have heard that story before, so I won't go into detail. But what was important was that, for me, I kept making progress. My mental construct was that you have to keep making progress. And so for me, that progress meant that even though I couldn't go straight to uni because I couldn't afford to, I started working, right? And while I was working in a factory. And if any of you have ever worked in a factory, I was working at a factory in Dagenham at Ford. And it's very monotonous, and it's very, very, very sort of boring. But every single thing that you get to do, I believe, can make a contribution towards you realizing that vision, if you allow it to. So you need the structure, and you need to allow that structure to develop you. But you have to be deliberate about what it's developing in you. Right? So you're working in a factory. I was working in a factory. And it was a 3-shift system. I absolutely hated night shift. Look, night shift, if you've ever done that, it's horrendous. You get to work at 10 p.m. Who starts work at 10 p.m.? Yeah, I did. You know? And you work till 6 in the morning, right? So you learn the discipline of timeliness. So yeah, the work is repetitive, but you learn how to, what are my coping skills? When I have to sleep during the day and I have to work at night, how do I manage that? But interestingly, we also had a resource center at work. Right? So it was a free resource center. You could go and you could study whatever you wanted to study. Of course, I'm not saying degree courses or anything, but skills. And at the time, I just literally had no computer skills. I didn't know how to use Microsoft Suite. I didn't know how to do anything. So what I used to do was that I would leave, particularly the night shift that I hated, I would leave the night shift at 6 a.m. We'd finish at 6. I think the center opened around 7 or 8 o'clock, so I'd stay on. I'd go into the center and I'd sit there and I'd do, all because I don't know how it works now, but in those days with Microsoft you could get tutorials and everything. And it will just teach you everything you need to know. It just takes time. And literally, that's what I do. So you're getting the structure and discipline of this is how grown-ups go to work. But at the same time, you're developing new skills, right? And in that time, that's why I learned everything I knew about computers. That's why I learned to type. So structure is really, really important. And the thing about structure is, and that development of self is that whether it is, whichever aspect of life we're thinking of, we need to continue to develop, but more importantly, in the workplace, we need to continue that development journey. We can't say that, this is my pathway, and my pathway is that I want to become the head of accounting or, whatever your line is, and I'm going to go through that line. And if anything veers me off that path, because bear in mind, my ambition was to become an engineer. So I was kind of a bit off track by this time. But all the other opportunities that come your way will create that structure and develop your skills to something else, towards something else you're going to do later. So structure is really important. And once at church, when I was having a similar conversation with young people, someone stood up and asked me a question. And he said to me, well, if you knew you wanted to run big, because by this time he's figured if you say you want to run big business, this was your big ambition, why did you bother becoming an engineer? Anyone want to hazard a guess?
Family.
Family?
Yeah, their
Family.
expectations.
My expectations of family. Good answer, not quite. I guess there was some expectation, but I didn't let that pressure me. But it's a good answer. Personal dream, okay.
You wanted to know the details of the job.
I wanted to know the details.
To be able to have an income before you actually.
So I think my actual answer probably combines some of what you have said. I really honestly felt that it was going to be intriguing, challenging, interesting, something nice to do. Of course you have to eat, so you need to do something. And so, because you have to eat, you're going to have to decide what you want to do. And I'm saying this especially to sometimes younger professionals when I meet them. And I remind them that, you know what, it's true, if I knew I wanted to run business, why did I become an engineer? And my question is, if Jesus knew he was going to save the world, why did he study the Bible? Why did he learn to be a carpenter? Right? We all need a professional skill. It's more than just food on the table. It is part of our development journey as a human being to actually know how to do something and do it really well. Everybody needs a skill. We don't all have to be engineers or doctors or nurses or accountants, but we have to be something professional that we need to do. And I believe it's actually a Christian responsibility to have something that you know how to do. Because the example we have been given, Jesus, he was a proper, he could have said, oh, you know, I have a mission, so, you know, Daddy, this carpentry business, you know, it's okay, you can keep your carpentry, and I'll do my show, right? Right? But there are two very important things that we were taught about him. He learned the carpentry trade, and he studied the Bible, right? That scene about him being in the church with men who had been preaching and teaching for decades, and he's able to quote and challenge it. So, you know, when we talk about our faith in the workplace, we have to recognize that actually work is part of what we're called to do. It's not a sideshow. It's not just because we have to. You know, if man and women are sent out of the Garden of Eden, and suddenly we're told that we have to look after the earth and so on. If you don't have any skills, what earth looking after are you going to do? It's a gap in your faith, actually, in living out your faith. If for whatever reason you find yourself in an unfortunate position where you haven't been able to develop the skills in any area at all, I think that it's something that we must actually do. We must endeavor to acquire skills. So that structure that helps you develop those skills, the ethic, all the things that you need around work is extremely important, and it is actually part of our faith. You know, I really want to emphasize, especially for younger people, because a lot of the time I meet them and they'll be like, oh, this is not important. No, it's all part of building you up to who you need to be. Let's move along. We talked about a foundation, we talked about ambition driven through responsibility. We talked about structure, developing yourself, and particularly developing yourself professionally. But then there's a softer side to that personal development, because as we continue to walk through that journey, we start to understand as we study what we think is right, what we think is not so right. But I think for me, values are more than just about what is right and what is wrong. If I asked you what you would definitely not compromise on, what would you say? If I asked you, what would you not compromise on? What would you say?
Well, disregarding somebody.
Disregarding somebody. You don't. So people shouldn't disregard people.
Yeah.
Don't compromise on that. Anyone else? What would you want? Sorry?
Keeping your word.
Keeping your word. Okay. Yeah. Integrity. So values are the non-negotiables. Those are the things that, you know, this one we're not even discussing. And as we go through our journey and our Christian journey, and we go through work, we start to, and I'm talking here about how you bring your values, particularly as a Christian, into the workplace. there have to be things about your life, and that's all of your life, that are non-negotiable, right? If someone said to you, you know, sign off on a piece of paper that that was saying that your company had $100 million in the bank, and you know there isn't $100 million in the bank, would you sign it? Or would, well, I saw but, you know, the truth of the matter is that for lots of people, it becomes a question of, but the boss might not be happy. What would you do? What would you really do? What are my values? Then I can share with you what I would do. So when I think about values, particularly the ones that pertain, I guess they pertain to all of my life, but in the workplace, integrity ranks highest. I always tell people about three: integrity, excellence, and generosity. And I'll tell you very quickly why excellence and generosity are there, but the point I really want to make is about integrity. Excellence because, look, if we're going to spend all this time developing our skills, growing ourselves, we better be really good at it, right? You have to be good at something. You don't have to be good at everything. Have you noticed how when somebody's really good at one thing, people think they're good at everything? It's really odd, right? Like, they're good at, I don't know, they speak, they're good at, in the English class, they're good. It could be that in some other aspect, they're really, really poor, right? But everybody suddenly assumes they're good. And when you dig, you always find that that good is driven by one, maximum two facts. But they just say, oh, this guy's really good. He's really, really good at his stuff. So excellence is important. It becomes sort of your calling card, right? So that's why that matters to me. Generosity because, especially looking at life from a Christian perspective, you actually can't go through life. You know, the people say, you know, self-made anything. There's no such thing as a self-made anybody. I don't believe that. There's no such thing as a self-made anybody because, why, do you live like on an island, you know, surrounded by your own buildings and, you know, I'm sorted and I got here by myself? And I think that because we're not islands, it means that on our journey there have been people who've been there for us, who've done various things for us, whether big or small. And so generosity for me is about recognizing that I'm also here to do something for other people to get ahead and, you know, and move forward. But let's talk about integrity. Now, what I have learned is that it's very, very easy. In fact, most people will tell you that integrity is one of their values. You know, the hardest thing to defend is your integrity. And so when I ask people, what's your non-negotiable? And they say integrity. You have to be very, very sure from your point of view of calling out integrity as a value that you really are sure that you won't negotiate on integrity. It's non-negotiable. And I'll tell you a little story. About 2 years ago at work, I found myself in a situation for the very first time in my life I felt like consciously where I had to defend my integrity. And I'd never known what it felt like to defend your integrity. Because most of the time when I think about, you know, my word is my word, I try to be on time, all these other things that are within your domain of control are relatively easy to measure from an integrity point of view. What if I accused you of wrongdoing? It's very different because when someone accuses you of wrongdoing, it is literally their word against yours. It's no longer someone just saying, oh yeah, when she said she'd do it, she did it. No, I'm saying you did something wrong. So from a work point of view, we've been working with this company Actually, before I tell you that part of the detail, let me tell you that day. So I'm sitting at my desk at work. Okay, picture the scene. I'm sitting there. My computer's open. I'm doing whatever. I don't know what I was doing. And an email comes through, right? And I start to read the email. And as I read the email, someone very important has sent me an email saying that someone says they're doing business with us, and they're very, very sure, categorically, that they paid me money. Right? When I say paid me money, you know what I mean, right? Yeah. To close the deal. I'm glad I can smile now, because I'm reading the thing and I'm literally, have you ever felt like you're shaking inside? Like your insides are shaking? I just didn't know what to do. Literally, the emotion of having your integrity challenged it's not a nice feeling. And immediately I had to step out of emotional mode and think, okay, right, what do you do next? What do you do when somebody has accused you, to somebody really important? Bear in mind, this is and in writing. So I take a step away, I think for a moment, and right, I've got to tell my boss about this, right? So I'm head of the company, my boss doesn't live in the country. I call my boss and I say, look, I'm just going to send you an email, and when you read the email, let's talk. I'll call you back. I send him the email. We talk, and this is how bad it was. He says to me, oh my goodness, your email's like I've just been given a cold shower. That bad, right? So what do you do now? Right? Pray? Okay. And then what else do you do? And after that?
I think right, and then also, you know within yourself that what they're accusing you of is not right.
Yes.
And you must have some evidence of some sort where you can defend your integrity.
So this is the important thing Angela raises, is that when we talked about all the things that build you up as a professional, as a person, that structure, the skills and so on, you need those things to be able to practically live your faith at work. You need them. Because if I didn't, you're absolutely right. What actually saved the day was my understanding of how governance works, right? So, what was the governance around this claim this person was making, right? So I pray, and honestly, when I get to the end of this story, there's a point where we even had to fast and pray. Yeah? Yay! But you have to do the practical things, right? And the practical things are only doable if you've already been operating in the context of your faith, right? So for me, I knew that the accusation was just impossibly untrue. Impossibly true, yeah, because that's a double negative. It was not possible that it was true. I knew that in my heart. I was upset, but I knew that I can categorically say to Lucy, that's not true. That why should you believe me? He said he did. He said he gave it to me. He said I didn't take anything. Right? And then the next thing, you know how governance works. So you know that, first of all, in terms of all the business dealings you've had with this company, and they were just upset because we had gone through a business transaction with them where we were going through a trial phase, and we said, look, post the trial, we decided that this is not good business for us, so we're not going to do it. So this was his way of saying, you will do this. I don't care whether, you think you don't want to do it anymore. We're doing this, and if it means I have to smear you to force you to do it, you'll do it, right? So that was the thinking, and I said, okay, the only way to now, if you followed all the steps throughout, and you know that from a professional engagement point of view and a governance structure point of view, you've done the right thing throughout, right? We didn't have a contract, we had an MOU. MOUs are time bound, you can always step out. We had clearly stated what we will and will not do, who had which responsibility, right? So faith in the workplace, I can only tell you, roll this off my tongue, because in that context, I made sure that all the right people in the company had all the skills to ensure that the right governance was respected and adhered to, were always involved in the process. You can't get away from skills. We honestly cannot pray our way to the top. Prayer is important, and prayer strengthens you, and prayer makes sure that you're doing this as a proper walk, but you've got to do the work. You've got to develop your skills. You've got to know what is required of you, of the role and the position. We have the example, so we have to. Anyway, so long story short, let me wrap up this story. We ended up having an external investigation. It's a big deal. I mean, I'm recounting it in a few seconds. And this story actually spanned almost a year. And we had a formal investigation. Go in front of the panel, everybody's asking, everybody had to go in front of the panel, reports were done, and you know, stress, and and everybody comes back and says, you're exonerated. True, you didn't take anything. We found one guy, he's going to have to go, but the rest of you fine, including boss, we see you're fine. And then the person says, I don't care that you guys say you're good, now I'm going to sue you. Wow. And that's when the prayer and fasting Honestly, no, I know I'm laughing, but it's actually true. We got to a point and we said to each other, you know where we've reached now, we have done all of the right things practically. We know that there aren't any gaps in what we've done. We've gone through the process. If the people still feel the need to go, you know, further, we're just going to go out. There's no more action to take. There wasn't. And we said, we're going to pray. And we did. We did. And I remember that particular year, it was, by the time we got to prayer and fasting, we'd gone from 2015 into 2016. So by the time we got into the usual prayer and fasting time at church, and we all, you know, you've got to pray for something. And I was just praying, Lord, I'm not praying for anything. I just want this thing to go away. We've done our bits, we've done, and I remember so well, it was probably into like, I don't know, the 7th day or something of, it was a few days into this prayer and fasting. That was the first or second Sunday of it, and we prayed this prayer. And honestly, I think it was Monday or Tuesday. For me, it was out of the blue. Maybe for other people, they saw it coming. I'm not going to claim I see things, I don't. The lawyer comes and goes, oh, they've withdrawn the lawsuit. Really? Are you serious? Really? So yeah, no, they and is anyone a lawyer here? Okay, they write these things without prejudice. I don't know what the legal terms, but it means that, you know, I know, they're not. What does it mean? You're not, what is it without prejudice?
You just can't use it. Yeah, it's not legally binding.
It's not legally, it's finished. And that's what happened. So this is actually real and true, that when you have to actually defend the things you claim, in the workplace, anywhere in life, it's actually can be challenging. And that's why the foundations and the structures and around your faith and how you do things is important. And it's another reason why I love this story, Joseph's story, so much. Because the thing about Joseph is that, I told you earlier on, and I said I'd remember to say it again, the detail, the in-between bits of his story are actually, for me, the most important bits. The day he's named Prime Minister, life's good, you know, he's the boss of everything, he'll deal with the child, and he's so credible, nobody can touch him, right? But what happened in between? What happened when a young man whose boss had trusted him and trusted him to run his household was accused by his boss's wife? Yeah. Right? And the interesting thing about that particular story is that on the one hand, this is probably the place where he developed a lot of the skills he needed to be Prime Minister, right? Because he was running a household, the financials, the blah, 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 blah. He probably got a lot of skill there. And then suddenly you're thinking, right now we're on track with it. Yes. Right? And then suddenly, one day the boss comes and, hey, you, what is this my wife is telling me about you? And next day, you're trying to explain yourself away, and it's her word against yours. And unfortunately, in this particular situation, You don't have the power to call for an investigation. Can you imagine Joseph going to, no, let's investigate. I mean, come on. Right? Next thing, you're behind bars. When you don't think you've done anything wrong. You know, and you know, the story goes on, and then the guys who were supposed to get him out forgot about him, and so on, so you realize that between the actual formulation of the vision and the realization of it, the career that happened in between, my goodness, was it tricky. But that was Joseph's career. I know he wasn't sitting in a bank or he wasn't in an office like many of us do, but that was the career that developed the skills in him to become what he was meant to purposefully become. And those details, you know, we read it because we can read it in minutes. Can you imagine, this was his life for years and years and years. This was stuff he endured, like, it's like, oh, let's spend one night in jail and come out. It's like he's in jail thinking, hey God, this is how you are. No, seriously, we had a vision. I agree, even when my brother said I was crazy, I was like, Charlie, you don't know God, we have plans. And then look at me, like, can you imagine? I mean, the number of times he must have sat in that jail cell and tell me, my brothers were right. All this fanciful dreaming, I just got a regular job instead of this That was all part of it. So what's the point? Those values that you pick up as a Christian, you want to live them in the workplace. I know sometimes people say that they're hard to live, but living them serves a purpose. It doesn't mean that it'll always be easy, but honestly, I'm yet to find anyone who says to me living true Christian values are wrong. Right? It doesn't mean that everyone will agree with you. That's not the point. Right? Story after story, I've shared a story, we can go through so many stories. Living those values can actually mean that you end up paying a bit of a price. I mean, Joseph could have given up his values. You know, I mean, it's not like the boss's wife will tell the boss. So then there'll be peace, and then I'll keep the career going. Right? And maybe he would have become, I don't know, CEO of Potiphar's entire empire. I don't know, he moved from house. But what he was supposed to do wasn't to become CEO of Potiphar's empire. Potiphar's empire was a stepping stone to getting to be boss of the land and saving hungry, dying people in future. So if he had compromised and let the challenge in front of him make him feel like, you know, yeah, I know I'm a Christian, you know, or if even I take this small money, it's not like, nobody will know, and the school fees I'll be able to pay. I'll even give offering. How about that? You know, I'll pay my tithe on this as well. I mean, right? But that's not how it works, and it means that it won't always be easy. That's the truth of it. Nothing is, if you expect that it's always going to be easy because you prayed about it, yes, pray and ask for the strength to make sure that you go through all the stages. But prayer won't make it suddenly a walk in the park and I just walked and I don't have to do anything. So that brings me to, I've only 3 more points, so we'll be done shortly, to discernment. It's very important to be discerning, right? I have a feeling that Joseph didn't let his brothers and voices, the noise, register. If he had let that register, there's no way. Their voice was not, those voices were not his voices for him. Right. Different people will tell you different things. You have to surround yourself with the right people. Deliberately, and that's part of discernment. You know, it's easy to discern what to do and what not to do as an individual. But when it comes to your people interactions, who are those people? There's nothing wrong with cutting some people off. But more, you seem surprised. You've never cut anybody off?
I have, it's just something that's very difficult to do.
Why? Why? Why is it difficult?
I think because sometimes it's connecting and emotional, having that emotional connection.
Which is probably historical. Yes. Yes.
So why are you letting the historical emotion tie you down? That's an important point she raises, because she's absolutely right. Most of the time when people don't want to cut people off, it's because, oh, you know, we went to school together. We used to eat in the same pantry. Right? No, because we allow ourselves to be overly emotional about it. That's why it's hard. Right? But you ask yourself, at this point in time, this stage in your life, you and that person, not the time you used to eat together, today, what do you have in common? What binds you? And it could be that that person could become someone that you re-engage in the future, but today, I'm not talking about a Machiavellian approach where you go around. That's what I'm talking about. Right? I'm talking about particularly voices. You see, one of the things we don't do enough of is translating our understanding of what's in the Bible to our practical lives. So I'm very particular when I talk about practice. You see, when we read the Bible in John, and it says, and trust me, I'm not a preacher, I just try to be a student of it, but definitely not a preacher. I wouldn't even attempt to come anywhere near that in my words. But when it says that, you know, whether it's Genesis or whether it's John, it talks about words, right? The world was formed with words. And John, the word was sent out, and the word bore, and you know, everything, exactly. And sometimes I am baffled by the fact that knowing those two texts from the Bible, we continue to underestimate the impact of words. Words are everything. I am telling you, if I tell you for the next 3 years that I think you're dumb, even if I step away, you will be thinking, but she said, she told me. Maybe she has a point. You have to be very, very, discernment is extremely important. It's important for what I just elaborated on in who you have to leave behind, but it's also very important in terms of who you have to let in. So my husband is here. And the point I'm making, the reason why I point him out is that discernment is also about who you choose to be in your life. Right? So my husband is a good example, but there's so many people in our lives, our friends, even our relatives. Look, your relatives, there's lack of joy in terms of birth, right? But after a while, there has to be some classification of relatives. And the most important reason why this is so important is that their words around you are either life-affirming or life-destroying. Their words are actually either going to get you forward or take you back. You know, for those of you who have children, who are you leaving your children with? I know I digressed a little bit from the workplace. Are there people who they're going to sit in front of them and spend half the day being told how dumb they are, how stupid they are, how they'll never amount to anything? Or there are people who are encouraging them with words. Words are everything, and that's why our discernment is so important. Because you now have to use your discernment to determine the life-giving words that will surround you. And it's only people who speak words. I don't have AI and stuff, but they only do as we tell them anyway. I'm talking people words. Learn to be discerning. Joseph definitely couldn't have absorbed his brother's word. Because if he did, it would be one of two things. Either he would not have realized his purpose, because he would have felt he would have been diminished in terms of his vision. Or the other thing that could have happened is that he would still realize his purpose, but be a very bitter person, right? Because he'd hold those words, hey, the day he see his brothers when they came, look at him. When you forgot it. I haven't forgotten. Now I should do what? I should do what? What? Right? He couldn't possibly have absorbed, and that's the problem, because even the energy for him to do this kind of thing is a waste of his energy. So we have to be very discerning. What we learn when we read has to apply internally. In the same way at work, there could be somebody at work who every single time they're reminding you how you're not getting things done the right way. Why are you having coffee with them?
Right. Sorry.
Why? Why is it a two-man company? Is it like the two of you have coffee with them, there's no coffee? Then have coffee alone.
That's it.
Right? And if you're in a situation where you are dealing with an unavoidable situation where the person who, from a work point of view, is giving you, the negative words, is maybe a boss or someone you can't avoid, you have to consciously filter those negative words out. It's really important. You either can practically and physically do something about it, or consciously just say, you know what, yeah, I know. You know the kind of people who say, oh, you went to school there? I didn't know you from that school get jobs here.
Wow. Shade.
You know? But there are people who do that, right? You say something about yourself personally, and that one thing they know about you, which is not all of you, one thing they know about you. Oh, people from that country, I've heard. You're not in my circle. Discernment says you're not part of it. So please be conscious of this. Whether it's in the work, very importantly in the workplace. Because if someone keeps telling you what you can't, you're here, you want to practice your faith in the workplace, you want to do well in your workplace. And those words are really important. And if we can put all that together, then really, I know some people believe you become wise through age. Who thinks you can become wise through age?
You're more wise if you learn from other people's errors and their ways of doing it.
Yes, that's my favorite cheat sheet. So my favorite cheat sheet is that, why do I have to experience all the things to learn all the people have lived lives, right?
Yeah.
Solomon, we all talk about his wisdom, but Solomon also had some extreme foolishness. Do you know that?
Yes.
Solomon, everyone says he's wise. That man, by the time his life was over, I don't think that dying Solomon would have recognized the enthroned Solomon. I was like, who's this guy? I don't know him. Right? So you're absolutely right. That's the cheat sheet that lots of people don't realize, that you can learn from other people. You don't have to make everybody's mistakes. You will still make your own. So cut corners with the ones that you can learn from. And that's why I don't believe that wisdom comes with just age, or comes with age at all. It comes with what you've chosen to use the time for. You see? So of course, if two people both had 10 years of life, and one has chosen to use their time to acquire wisdom and the other hasn't, then of course the one who has chosen will have more wisdom. But somebody could be 10 and have more wisdom than a 30-year-old. Because a 30-year-old has been happy to sit around and do nothing and not learn from life, and every day say, Mommy, where's my food, and just chill and not do anything. So wisdom, if you build up from all the things we've said, we've walked through foundation, ambition, vision, all these things, wisdom is a deliberate pursuit where a lot of it comes through these steps that we take, but a bigger part of it comes from our deliberate inquiry into wisdom. I always look at wisdom as, and this is a very Christian definition from my point of view, it's seeing life through God's lens. It's a different lens, right? It's what makes, because wisdom is you're assuming that every time you ask a wise person a question, they'll make the right decision. If they're going to make the right decision, then to some extent, the wisdom that you're actually asking them to draw on is to be able to extrapolate the outcome of the decision they make, see whether it's going to be, you could go left, right, or left. So if I go right, okay. If I go left, okay, let's play it back. Okay, the answer is right. They've applied, but the truth of the matter is that you and I don't have the capacity, well, I don't know whether any of you, but I can't see the future. But wisdom is that thing that you can see through that lens, that you're saying that, okay, I'm making this call knowing that given everything, the whole circumstance, this is the best way for us to move forward. And that's why studying the Word of God, but also applying it, practicing it, develops wisdom. It helps you develop and establish wisdom. And that wisdom, again, I brought up the word wisdom in the context of the workplace because we do so much of our learning and growing as adults in the workplace that we have to deliberately, when you're young it's in school, fine, but we're not in school anymore. So lots of it's happening at work. And now we're applying wisdom and looking at the outcomes, looking at whether it should have been left instead of right that time. Okay, next time I'll make sure that it's left and it's not right. Are we actually applying these words and growing in wisdom? Wisdom is that thing that will help you, hopefully, not to make the same mistake twice. But if you're not deliberate about it, you make the same mistake 3 times and more. You know, you meet people and say, oh, I'm always like that. Why are you always like that if you don't like it? Because the way you said I'm always like that, it's obvious you don't like it. So why are you always like that? It's a choice. Our last word. I think ultimately, this is what it boils down to, right? Unfortunately, and I stand to be corrected, I think the majority of us can go through a lifetime without it. So there's a reason why you're willing to come and spend your afternoon here today. And whatever that reason is, it probably is part of something else. And if you're here just because you were kindly coming to support me, thank you very much. But also, there's something you're looking to marry your faith and your work, and hoping that together we'll talk about this. I'm hoping from this word onwards we'll be able to have a wider conversation about that. But it's purposefulness. Ultimately, we all exist for a purpose. Remember when I talked about words go out and they give life and they give meaning. We're here for some form of meaning. And as Christian, our primary purpose, I'm sure most of us will agree on, is the service of the Lord, right? But within that service, there's a practical side to it. That's why you and I have different skills. That's why you and I have different competencies, right? And going back to my hero, Joseph, his competence of saving the world is actually practicing his faith, right? So for me, I don't make this distinction of, oh, it's all about, come and I have to say hallelujah, sister, did you go to church yesterday? You didn't! She didn't go to church. We need to pray for you. But more importantly, did you get the work done? Oh, you had some trouble with the work. Can I help you? Oh, this particular work, I don't know how to do it. There's Ajwa can help you. That's all part of it, right? So it's not just the service and worship is not just about the time praying and the time congregating. It is using the skills and experiences that we have purposefully, right? Joseph saved the world from hunger. What are you and I going to do with those skills, that thing that we've been given and we've been sent out into the world with? What are we going to do with it? Big or small, it doesn't matter. It's not about what size it is. It is whether we get it done. But the question is, do we ever find it? Right? Joseph could have dreamed and thought, I think I had too much wachi yesterday, that's why I had that dream. Right? But he took the time to actually reflect and think on it. And I think living purposefully ultimately is what we should each individually strive to get to. And it doesn't mean we'll all realize it when we're teenagers like Joseph. Some people don't even realize what they're here for till it's much later in life. But ultimately, when that realization comes, especially if you pursue it, I think there's no more greater reward than to live that. You know, the thing that you're doing, you think, there's something in here. When I do it, it just feels like I'm just supposed to be doing this. It's like, you know, I have my job and everything, but this thing, when I'm doing it, it's like we're made for each other. That's probably as close to purpose in terms of feeling that I can describe. But it's really important. So I thank you very much for your attention. Okay, good.
Sorry, I got carried away writing my own notes. Thank you very much. That's powerful. Does anyone have any questions? If you're a bit shy, you can write down your questions. We'll pass it to Kwame. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, it's not so much a question. I think I actually just wanted to make a short comment. I don't mean to embarrass you, but I actually just want to, I think all of us in different ways, I just want to thank you for just your example, I think, because, you know, for what you said, all the different things, you know, you had to make a choice to be who you are, so I just wanted to just say thank you for just being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You spoke about integrity at the top, but my question is, when you're not at the top, you're not too low at the bottom, but what do you do when, we say it's easy to say integrity, as you said, it's our thing that we won't compromise on, but I think we often do with the small things. But when you're in the middle, you don't have the power to say, no, this is what I can stand for. How do you get away with not losing your job, not losing favour with the bosses, and still holding on to some form of your integrity at the middle?
Yeah, good question. I think that ultimately, I'm yet to see someone who was sacked for doing the right thing, even if the boss didn't like it, that's in the company's interest. Right? I think a lot of the time, when someone is doing something, and you're right, like the boss is doing something, you're supposed to go along with them. The challenge that that boss has, if you don't go along with wrongdoing, is that then they have to explain themselves why they want to get rid of you. Right? They may still punish you in other ways, don't get me wrong. Maybe there's a, you know, end of year rating gives you a low rating, or there's a promotion, don't get me wrong. So I'm trying to say that when you do the right thing, it's not very often that the stakes are job loss. However, the stakes can be, you know, a certain jail term, like, you know, Joseph, you know, like you're out there. And you first need to be able to say to yourself, I am doing the right thing because it's right for the company, right? I remember I once worked in a company where people were very sort of, you probably experienced it in camps, like there's this side and that side, and all the way down the ladder, people had decided that they decided which camp we're on. So I go into a meeting and we're having a discussion. And for me, I'm here, I work for a company. I'm not in your camp or her camp. We should be in one camp. Right. So I make my points, and then after the meeting, some of my team members came to me and they were like, yeah, Lucy, we heard about the meeting. And we just came to check with you. I mean, whose side are you on? Excuse me? Yeah, because, you know, we need to, if you tell us where you're aligning, then we also know how to align. I was like, I defend only one camp here, and it's called the company. So if I have something to say, I will say what I think. I may not always be right, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm always right. But I will always say what I think is in the company's interest. Whether it's camp A, B, or whatever camp's version, I don't care, I've said my piece. So, and it wasn't the popular thing to say, because everybody understood that they were in a camp. And yes, at times, I ended up in situations where there are some people who weren't even speaking to me. I was like, what happened there? Well, he said when he raised the point, you didn't defend him. If it wasn't a true point, it wasn't a right point, what am I supposed to do? You know? So I think if you really stick to it, and that's the point I made around governance as well with the integrity, you also have to make sure that you're clean in the way you do things. Because most people who end up in trouble are people who, he's got dirt on you. Why should anyone have dirt on you? I'm not saying that we're perfect human beings, don't get me wrong. But as much as it concerns you, don't let there be dirt on you. I hope that helps.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I wanted to ask, one of the things that you mentioned which was quite important was that during the time when you were an engineer, that you used the time wisely in terms of building your skills. So I wanted to ask if you could relate that to the point where, let's say when Joseph was in jail, and he could have spent time sort of mourning and not doing anything. Have you ever been in that position in your career, and what's the best way to use that time?
In terms of being in a position where I didn't feel that I was like living my full potential?
Yes.
Yes. So I remember a time, right, so my sons are here, so they're going to kind of have me out on this. But they were really little, so they won't remember, they won't know the detail of this. But when they were particularly little, I think they were about 4 and 6, yeah, or 5 and 7, whatever. That was the first time that a company offered me a CEO position. And I went home, we talked about it, I prayed a lot about it, thought about them. And at the end of the day, but I didn't take that job, and it was 2 reasons. In the end, I felt that when I prayed about it, it just didn't feel like the thing to do. And secondly, I mean, at the time where we were living, I felt that they were little and they had a lot to deal with in terms of me working a lot of the time. And I just knew that if, however much time they felt I was away from them now, taking that job, I would be away from them more. They just wouldn't see me, because I knew the state of the company, I knew what they're asking for. These kids would just not see me. And I make it sound so easy. I prayed, I didn't feel like it, and then I did some analysis, but actually, the more I ended up taking a job which wasn't as senior and actually paid less, right? So on both counts, it's like lose-lose. But I felt that, it felt right, and for them, I thought it was the right thing to do as well for me. But every time I had a hard time in that job, I tell you, I'd go, gosh, I should have just taken that job. Every single time. And, it sounds like a short, simple period, but between not taking that job and actually eventually getting a CEO job was 3 years. And every time and what upset me even more is towards the end of that 3-year period, I actually had a boss that actually took, you remember those voices, that thing, when I tell you things, they're real. This boss actually said to me, oh, but you're so far away from being a CEO, I don't even know why you're thinking about it. Wow. Can you imagine? Wow. You're sitting thinking, me, who was offered, and I turned it down. I cried. Wow. Yeah. Look, words, I cried. I was just so emotional about it. I thought, how was I with my prayer wrong? What did I do wrong? It was extremely upsetting. That's the thing that you go through, Joseph probably thinking, I just look, this thing, I could have, avoided it. But I didn't think it was the right thing to do. But it was difficult not to do it. It was difficult. And then you had the people who knew they didn't take that job. So every little thing you did, see you. It's such a combination of things. So that's why you have to go into yourself and draw that strength and stick with the vision, because it will happen. And I'm so thankful I did, because when it did happen, it happened in a way that was much more than I could have anticipated, even compared to what I turned out. So you need to be able to remind yourself while you're in that position, sometimes through your own kind of making it, in my case, sometimes it's not your making, but don't lose sight of the vision. Whatever I'm doing today doesn't mean I can't be that thing or do that thing that I'm supposed to do. Today is just the interim. Interim. And if you remind yourself that today is interim, you keep going. You go home, maybe sometimes you have to cry a little, sometimes you have to call that person that discernment has said, that's the right person that I should be talking to. Then you have to have your coping mechanisms, and it's okay to have coping mechanisms and stay focused and keep going.
Thanks for an inspiring talk, Lucy. My question is maybe a little bit personal, but you know, as a female who's climbed up and done really well for yourself, how have you managed a family, being a wife, your faith, time for reflection, and also, you know, growth within yourself? How do you do that? Because I think sometimes for some of us young women, it may feel like we can only do one and not the other, or we don't know how to balance it, or we don't have other women around us who are like you. So could you just give us some tips on how to do that?
Okay. Since we have participants in the room, if you disagree with me, you can raise your hand and say, "Mommy, it doesn't work like that." I think that you've heard this thing before where people say your strengths can be, the other side of your strength is a weakness. And I remember in a training course, and one of the things that came out was that I have a hurry-up driver. I'm driven to hurry up, right? Which is really, I've never heard of this, but literally it's like you're always in a hurry to get things done. Next, what's next? And I think my hurry-up driver can actually be a big flaw as well, because when you're doing something in concert, there's more than one of you, always being in hurry-up mode doesn't always work. Sometimes you need to slow down a little and let other people catch up and not be so impatient about it. So I put that out there, that I have a hurry-up driver. And the reason why I mention that is that when you're trying to combine many things, and sometimes I do get the feedback at home, you know, home doesn't work the way work works. Right? It's not like we did a project plan and then the milestones are in the plan. You haven't hit the milestone. Why haven't you hit the milestone? Right? You know? Yeah, I wish it did, but you know, one person will do one thing, the other one will do something completely the opposite. So I think how it has worked for me is that I'm very open to help and support. And I think that my number one supporter is my husband. So, and it's important back to the point about discernment, and we're amongst Christians. So for me, I took time to pray. I was like, you know, I need to meet someone who's going on that journey with me. I don't know how. I don't know the journey. At that point, you don't know what you're going to do, but you just know that you want to do something. And someone has to, you're going to do this together. So that's number one. You have to be really deliberate about, now I'm talking in the context of young women trying to balance everything. You have to be, you know, deliberate about who you choose to go on that journey with. That's the starting point. But then at the same time, you have to kind of recognize that it's your journey, it's our journey, it's other people's journey. Everyone's trying to do something. So you have to be able to balance it out and give and take. You can't have it all take. There has to be giving, so to speak. So you have to really, your mental, and sometimes giving and taking may not be one day. It may be that you are able to take for a year, and then suddenly the person needs your support for just a month, and you're like, oh, really? You need my help? Gosh, you're always asking me to do things. But in reality, that's how it works. So that's number one. Number two for me has been that, you know, also wider family support. So I don't always feel that I have to do everything. There's some things that I can let other people help me with, and as long as they have the right intentions, I'm okay to do that. And I think that the other thing is, and I'm talking now about my family a little, I've tried really hard to understand each person. Doesn't mean that my interaction with each one is perfect. I try to understand what really works for them, you know. And that was a big mistake I made as a young mom, huge mistake. I always tell the kids about it. So my first son was a bit, you know, he's happy, as in you eat a little, he's fine, like his school, you know, not fussy at all. Then have another child.
Oh yes.
And then I assume it's copy-paste. You know what? We just copy-paste. Why do we need a new formula? And he's a completely different person, right? One is happy to have, was happy to have milk. This one's like, I don't drink milk, right? One is happy to go to bed by himself. One is, you need to support me to sleep. I need my sleep. You know? And so on and so forth. And you have to be adaptable in learning, because it's all still developing yourself. You're not going to have a formula that I read tons of books. You'd expect me to read tons of books, but you think reading all of that, after that, you still have to be adaptable, because they're going to be completely different people. So that's another thing. And then it's all about then, when all that part is done, then how do you make this a journey for all? So like I said to you, there's a point when I didn't take a job. And in fact, what I have consistently tried to do, not saying perfectly, is before I make a career move, I think I try to have a discussion whether it's in everybody's interest. Will it work for all of us? It can't work for just me, because if it works for just me, that's hurry up driver taking over, you know. Hurry up driver says, let's do this, you see. And then you look behind and everyone else, oh, bye-bye. Tight, so to speak. So it's about creating that balance, allowing the right people into your life to support you, and having a learning spirit. The formula isn't set. You know, they're going to keep evolving, and you have to evolve too. And what worked when the person was 5 is not going to work when they're 10, because they're not 5 anymore. You know, and then you're going to discover things when they're, you know, 12, and you didn't know they were, oh, you like this? Oh, yes, I'm not too, kind of thing. So it's about that. And I think also that, you know, this is a more sort of based on impression and thought rather than experience. I do think that sometimes I think a lot of you young women put too much pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
I think so. I think sometimes the pressure is too much. You know, and so sometimes we become preoccupied with, I've got to get it all right. Right? But it's not like a math equation. There's an answer to the math equation, and the answer has to be exact, I know. But life isn't like that. And, you know, your life and her life and my life will have different tweaks. Even if you sit down and you think about your mother's life and your grandmother's life, you know that they had different lives. So your life won't be like their life. So why should your life be like your friend's life? And I think that's a very important thing, to be able to take a step back, to breathe. Of course, if you want these things, it's important to pursue them. But allow yourself to have your life. That is yours.
Hi Lizzie, thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed your presentation. I've learned a lot of making notes. I just have 1 or 2 questions related to your business and business side. As a co-founder of Fresh Bakery, what was your toughest business challenge venturing out into that market in Africa? And also working with other partners, what would you say was like the toughest thing that you had to put up with, and how did you combine and overcome that challenge?
Okay, so I'll answer the second question first. Working with the 3 other people co-founders, that's actually pretty easy. Because we'd worked together before for about over 2 years. So we knew each other really well. So you're coming together on the basis of knowing each other, but also knowing the skills and competences of each person. So we work really well together because we all know different things, right? So if you're going to go into business, choose the right people. And if you can complement each other, all the better, right? One is very techie, one is techie commercial, one is about people skills, one is about business, and we all pull it together, so that works. Interesting question about venturing it out into African countries. Okay, so I have a question for you. Where in Africa do you know?
Nigeria.
And oh, that's not all that South. That's just Ghana, Nigeria. There's another, was it 13 or 15 more to go? It's 15 or 17 countries, right? It's an interesting question because how would I venture into Estonia?
Get to know what the demand is, I guess, what you want to sell, to target the right market.
Why would it be any different?
Culture?
I'm not Estonian, so I also don't know the culture, and they don't speak English either. Do you get the point I'm trying to make? It's a very interesting question she raises, but over and over again, I meet people who make it sound like venturing into an African country that you need to deep dark. Terrain. That, the business rules there must be very different. The people there, they have Martian rules. And here we exist in earthly business rules. So it's exactly the same, that you need to know the market. And you need to know whether what you're providing as a solution is something the market needs. Is there customer base? Is there the right segment? Are you targeting properly? What do people, so on and so on. So all the metrics are the same. And in our case, we're actually very fortunate because one of my co-founders is Congolese and I've lived in Congo, right? So there's a reason to the market. But, excuse me, a more important point is that, look, we have 54 countries, am I right? Yeah? 54 countries. Nigeria is not a country, it's, a whole, probably another, 5 countries? Yeah, the reason why I use that Nigerian example is that if you're doing business in Lagos, you're not going to apply exactly the same in Kano, right? It just doesn't work like that. And it's out of respect and understanding that people in Lagos can have different needs and different likes from people in Kano. The same for DRC, the same for Ghana, the same for Kenya, so on and so forth. Unfortunately, and I say this, in all seriousness, through the lens of media, first of all, we've diminished the place into the size of one country in our heads. I know you know better, don't get me wrong, so this is no longer about your question. We've diminished it to the size of one country in our head. And then suddenly we thought that, it can't be the same business rules. Because, I know, they're different. Aren't they fighting out there? That's what people will say. Aren't they fighting out there? Right? But again, we're talking, you use the Congolese example, where fighting is, and the capital, and it's not always fighting, but I know the East is very volatile. I think it's 3 time zones away. The time is actually 3 hours ahead, right? Yes, right? You cannot actually get there by road. You can only fly. Yes, there is no road between Kinshasa and Goma. No road. Forest, Amazon forest, right? The DRC is the only place that has a forest that is actually the same as the Amazon geographically. It's impossible. There are parts of it nobody has ever been into, right? But through a narrow lens, Kinshasa and Goma must be the same place. It must be that the people there do absolutely, isn't it like a battlefield? So if you want to venture into anything, whether it's business in Africa, business anywhere, and Estonia is a good example, you may choose to do something in Estonia, why not? It doesn't have to be Africa, it doesn't have to be, it can be anywhere. The same business rules apply. We go and we determine what is needed, what's the opportunity, what's the solution you can provide, how can we do it, what are the rules of the land, so on and so forth, and you get it done. I hope that helps.
Actually, I have a question.
Yes, Lisa.
So my question is, whilst I know my ultimate purpose is to serve God, and not everybody's going to be a Joseph and dream and see what their own line of purpose is. There's a deep desire inside of me to fulfill something, but I just don't know what it is. How do I go about finding that out?
Okay. Sometimes you meet people who say they always know what they want to be in life. Have you met those people? Yeah, I'm not one of them. But there's some people who absolutely know. And I say to people that, look, for me, I think I'm closer in my thinking now of what I want to, what my life is about. But it's happened more through a process of elimination than knowing. So I think there are different methods, and some people wake up and they know, and they have a wonderful dream and it's all mapped out. But I think really and truly, you will start to feel in yourself the things that work for you and the things that don't. And if you start eliminating the things that you don't feel connected to, or you don't enjoy, or they don't feel right, and so on, you get closer and closer and closer to the things that do feel right. And as you build that pyramid of what feels right, you get closer to living purposefully. That's what I believe. I think for me that's how it's worked. So be patient with yourself, but allow yourself also to filter out what doesn't work, what doesn't feel right. You know, I've had many jobs. I mean, I've done call center, I've done I didn't work in the cinema and suddenly think, oh gosh, I'm going to become a great cinematographer one day. This film thing intrigues me. I didn't think that's all. I got next. That would be my response.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Another question. I just wanted to ask, throughout your career, how would you had quite a few jobs, I don't know what you had quite a few jobs. How do you transform from being, the factory worker, or even the job just before you were offered a CEO role? How do you get into that mindset of being a CEO when you are, in the middle or maybe even at the bottom?
Good question. I think I'll start from the one about the factory and so on. I've already explained how you still develop skills in whatever you're doing. But your mind has to stay tuned to at least your next step. It may not be this big thing. So for me, getting through the factory life, I mean, it was tough, right? Everybody in the factory told me, voices, oh, nobody lives here. No, listen, when people, sometimes these voices, they mean well, they're not always ill meant, right? So these women were trying to manage my expectations of life, right? And I know a gentleman who I worked there with, right? He recently retired to Ghana. We worked there, So the day I'm like, wow, you stayed. Wow, I'm done, So they were being realistic. So one was around owning this whole space. So okay, it may be that people get stuck here. I don't intend. I will do whatever. I'm working on getting out. So one is staying focused. The other was around knowing who you are as an individual, and I can't find the right words. Being you in terms of what you believe in, what you know is right. So one of the things that happens in factories a lot is that people swear a lot in factories. Oh yes. Yeah, part of factory life. I just wasn't brought up. I find swearing actually very offensive. Yeah. Like I feel like offended. I don't feel offended very often, but swearing, I feel offended. And one day it was night shift again. Gosh. And we had a break and we're sitting around chatting a little bit. And then it was time to go back. And you know how factories work. There's a certain number of widgets you need to produce in an hour. Time is time. And this boss of ours shows up and starts effing and blinding about how we're on our break and we should be at work. And I was like 19 or 20. And honestly, in my head, I was like, oh no, he didn't. So I walked up to him and I said, can I see you in your office, please? For the life of me, I can't believe I actually did that. Can I see your office, please? You were just swearing at all of us. I don't swear at people, and I don't like people swearing at me. I don't want you to swear at me. And he was like, because he was like probably in his 40s or 50s, and there's this kid. He's like, oh, I'm really, really sorry. I think it wasn't, I don't think it was the words, it was how it was managed. It was the fact that I didn't want it to be a public thing. And I was deeply offended. It wasn't just a quick moan. I was offended. And he apologized and he said to me, let's wipe the slate clean. It will never happen again. I won't swear at you again. Right? But I can only say that because I won't do it. You can't go around telling people don't swear at me just because you feel like telling them. So back to your point. One is around staying focused and filtering out what doesn't work. One is about knowing who you are and living who you are, right? To get there. So if swearing isn't going to be part of it, it's not going to be part of it. I'm not going to say in factories, this is what we do, so I do it, right? And then the bit about being a CEO, I think once in my mind, I was clear that it was what I wanted to do. I found the right people to tell. And some of those people actually invested a lot in preparing me for it. Right? So I remember the first boss I remember very clearly telling was probably about 10 or so years ago. And it was so funny because I thought I was kind of chancing it. Maybe I like chancing things. So what do you want to do in 5 years? I want your job. and he wasn't CEO of a country, he was CEO of the region, and I was thinking, I shouldn't say that. Anyway, it is what I want. And then, interestingly, within a few, probably months of me saying that, his actually lingos to change, and he said, oh, Lucy's going to be a CEO one day. And wow. It just was because I had told him, he started playing it back to people. And so then every time we had an engagement, it was really about, okay, I know what you want to do, you need to do, so you give me a project, and you think, oh, why are you doing this? This job is beneath you. But in his mind, he's thinking, these are some of the things you need to know to get there. In that company, I even took a job once where somebody, literally, voices, came and sat next to me. She meant well. You know, Lucy, I know you're ambitious and everything, but this job that you're taking, it feels like a demotion. How did you do this? I mean, I know in my job there's nowhere else for me to go because I reached the top. But she wasn't CEO, but she reached the top of where she was. How do you do this? Why are you doing this? My husband says there, someone that particular job, someone actually asked him, what did your wife do wrong? We heard she got demoted. Oh. Right? But it was an opportunity. He was giving me an opportunity to develop a completely new skill set that they knew I'd need for the future. But to do it, you know, sometimes if you haven't done the thing before, I'm sorry, but you can't, if I've never cooked jollof rice and I come and tell you, you've never tasted my jollof rice, and I tell you that I can cook jollof rice. The first day you try me, will you give me your sister's wedding? The first day I say, oh, your jollof is good. We're having dinner at home, can you give us some jollof? You'll never give me the big deal, right? No one will make you a CEO when they haven't tested you on smaller things. It just doesn't make sense. Are you crazy? Right? So it means that you have to be willing to be trained. And I give him as an example. Actually, there's subsequently a couple more people. In fact, one who made a huge investment. I felt that he even took a risk because he was putting my name forward to people when, at a point where he'd only known me for like 2 months. I'm thinking, you're chancing it here, right? But that is what's important. To find the right people so they will help you. They will help you grow into it because you can't be it the day you get the job. You have to start being it before you get the job.
Hi Lucy.
Hi.
So my question, you have kind of partly answered, but I just kind of want to get clarification. So there's somebody else similar to yourself who's like a Christian professional and has a bit more experience than us younger ones. And this person said to me that in the first few years of your career, take every opportunity that's given to you. So every single job role that's offered to you, not the ones that you come across, but every single thing that you're sought out for, just accept it and don't even sort of ask questions or think about it. Just take it because there's a reason why it's been offered to you, and whether you like it or you hate it, it's like a stepping stone kind of thing. But then listening to you not too long ago, you mentioned about turning down the job because when you looked at the circumstances, it wasn't the best option kind of thing. So then when I heard that, because both of you, I sort of see you as the same type of position in terms of people to advise me. And just now I was thinking, like, do I really need to take every single opportunity? But then you also mentioned that it was at the time that you had your kids. So then I was thinking, well, what I actually want to ask is, would you advise that when we are like starting out our careers, that we take every opportunity, and when we're a bit more established, quote unquote, then we sort of evaluate the ones to take and not to take? I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Look, I say that when you leave university, whatever level of education you get to, I don't know about you, but your first thing is you're grateful you have a job. I mean, look, I got a job.
Yeah.
They hired me. Somebody in some company thought I could do something. So I think at that very first, and I'm not saying take anything that comes. So I think when you leave uni the first time, most people who would hire you take the job, and I think you should. Right? Because at that point, even if it's not fully to some big grand plan you have, you really don't have many skills. So whatever job you take, you will learn something. And I think early in your career, not everybody gets this opportunity, but if you can have the chance to learn lots of different disciplines, sometimes by taking many jobs, you should do it. Because that's the time where you're young enough that if you go walk into something you know nothing about, no one's going to give you a multi-million-dollar project from day one. So they'll take risks with you, but they won't take huge risks and get you fired or anything. You get to learn at companies' expenses. So some people are fortunate, they go into structured graduate programs. Not everybody gets that. Some people go into situations where they have to grow through and maneuver. But I agree with that person. Early in your career, you should get as much experience as possible. As much. Because honestly, you have nothing to lose. And imagine, I can now walk to a call center. When I'm talking to call center agents and I tell them I know what it's like to be a call center agent, they're like, oh, yeah. And then you call the customer and they're like, don't call my house ever again. Who gave you my number? I'm sorry. And I've done all that before, so you should. But I think as you get through your career, probably sort of, I know for most people they'll probably be in their 30s by then. I don't know, I'm just sort of, I'm not saying it's cast in stone. You start to want to take us, get into direction. Maybe some people it's earlier than 30, but you have to start building direction into your career at some point. Once you've done some of the elimination and you realize that actually I didn't like the call center very much, I don't even want to manage one, then it goes off the list. But you have to start then deliberately seeking out roles that get you closer and set you on the right path. And occasionally, hopefully not too often, you don't get jobs that you turn down, right? Because turning down a job is not ideal. In that process, you kind of upset a few people. It's like, we want you don't want us, kind of thing. So, but it will happen. If it happens, it happens. But as you start to build, because you want direction, you're choosing jobs that fall in line. And then as you get into the whole bigger circle, as I said, it's no longer just about you. Then you have to start choosing things that you can make work for many people. And back to, because I liked your question, I think that by the time you get further along your career, there's alignment in there, because when you're more likely to have a family. You know the PepsiCo CEO?
Yeah.
And I love listening to it. And there's one she did about, the one about getting milk. Do you remember? Have you seen that one? So it's like she's come home from work, she's really, you're running PepsiCo, there's a lot of running. And like, I think the children needed milk or something, and she didn't buy the milk. It's hilarious. And her mom's at home had to go at her, like, you didn't bring the milk. And she's almost trying to say, look, I've just been running, And I was like, I don't care. Here, you buy milk. Right? So, at some point, then it's not just about I get to run everything. You still have to be able to balance and make time to buy milk or go to someone's school thing or something. So that's what I'm saying. So I think ultimately, what the person and I are both saying is that your decision criteria evolve. What makes you decide at 25 is not going to be the same thing that makes you decide at 35 or 45 and so on.
Thank you very much. I think we're out of time now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Quist, for sharing so much of that. My question is, you're transitioning from CEO of Metal Ghana to all the amazing things you're doing now. For me, watching it has been so gracious. It's been a class act, I think, so worthy of emulation. My question is, how do you cope with change? Because you do it so flawlessly. Because some people can sit in jobs and don't want to move because they are scared of so many things, but you know to do it so graciously. So can you please share a bit about that? Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. I'm not entirely decided yet in my mind as an individual how much I like change. I'm not entirely decided. I remember that, when I was younger, I'd go on camp, and it would be just the 2 or 3 weeks. And then when we're leaving, I'm so upset. He's not my best friend, she's my best friend. We're leaving camp, this is end of life, right? Now I think that when I go in, and we're talking about work here, going to work situation, I give it my all. And I think because I put my all into my work, maybe it creates an impression that we're tied to the hip. I think they're more important than your faith, your family. They're much more important than work. But work is important, don't get me wrong. So now I find that, making change around family and so on, that I find a bit upsetting. I think change around work is that at some point, now I meet people now who will tell me things like they expected to work at the same place for 20 years. And my face is like, really? Right? So I go into situations now, because I'm not entirely sure how I want to deal with change, managing my expectations, knowing that it's going to be finite. Right? If you accept that there will be an end and a transition, then it's not a big shock. Right? Whereas if you sit there assuming that I'll be doing this job forever, the day you're not doing it, it's almost like a part of you is taken away from you. And I've had enough jobs to know that the change will come, the transition will happen. You will not be doing this in however long time to come. So what I try to do, again, because I'm not fully decided on how I feel about it, is prepare. Right? And I think that for me, the hardest thing about change is probably going into a situation not being very sure what to do, right? And I think the last maybe 3 years or so, I've been very fortunate that I've been in a position where I'm able to understand more of myself and practice more of myself, right? So today we're here together and I'm speaking to a room full of people. And the first time I wrote down that I wanted to speak to people was, that I clearly remember in a book, was 2010. I wrote it down, I have a book of ideas, and I wrote it down. I said, I'd like to go around and speak to people. And it was hard. And something happened around 2012, right? I didn't realize, now I realize what's happened. I didn't realize what was happening. Then I started speaking. I didn't know I had. That sounds odd, right? Yeah. But what's happening is that we have a big team meeting every Monday. Big. It wasn't in a room. It was, I should say, a department meeting. It wasn't a team meeting. And every day when we had the department meeting, you're supposed to go to KRAs, blah, 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 blah. And this was not in my CEO job before that. And I started out talking about things I was reading. So I'd say, oh, I'm reading, I know, one of my favorite guys, so that guy who wrote The Tipping Point. What's his name now? Yes, Malcolm Gladwell. I love Malcolm Gladwell. So I said, oh, I read The Tipping Point, blah, 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 and we'll talk about it, we'll have a discussion. And I say, oh, I read Outliers, and I'll read another. And gradually, it's really interesting because later, a few years later, when I started speaking to people, one of my old team members sent me a video. Said, do you remember this? Oh, wow. I thought, oh, wow, that's when it actually started, right? And I realized that's something I love to do, I really want to do, and I want to continue to do. It's an example of what I started in the last 3 years that I get to continue to do. I also realized that I'm very much into solutions and ideating and thinking differently about business. I mean, people say people are entrepreneurial in business. I'm talking about really challenging the model. Now, Joa sitting there, it was in one of our challenging the model teams. So she knows how I think about that. So I think the point I'm making is that transitions will happen, but you will still take bits of yourself with you. And I think, I keep saying I think, but in these last 3 years, I've had the opportunity to practice some of those bits about me, that when it came to thinking out next, it was obvious that those had to stay. Right? So you've changed, but you haven't entirely changed. You were doing some things then. They may not have been the headline, they've just become more of the headline now. Yeah, it's pretty much it. But that comes a time, like I said, I've had my crying that I'm leaving camp, so I don't want to leave, or crying that I'm leaving school. And as you go along the journey, you learn. So what's consistent is that there are things about you that you're able to keep doing. And I love, for instance, the way you do the videos and you interview people. I don't think any job is going to change you from doing that. It's you. And that consistency will manage you through any change, because you'll be like, but this part of me I get to keep doing. Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you.
Something for you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you. I thought getting Lucy to come here was, I don't know, was a breeze, to be honest with you, because I actually didn't think she was going to accept. And then I had a meeting with her. We meant to spend an hour. We spent about 3 hours in Costa. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming. And we couldn't just let you come here. We thought we'd just give you a little token to show our appreciation. Thank you so much, Lucy.
Okay, hope everyone's been blessed today. Just before we go on and do more networking, I'll just ask